Operational Perspective on Conflict and Peace in Burundi by Lida Wide. And the second webinar series is by Duncan Mani and Eriza Erman from the Research Center of Area Studies at BRIN, Indonesia, talking about the mining industry in Southern Africa and Indonesian Diamond Trading Network. And then the third webinar series is on transnational political practices and integration in second-generation migrants in Ghana by Kwebena Owusu Kiai, and about Africans in Tanah Abang, Jakarta, Indo-African Trade Networks by Helmi. So today we will have the fourth African Roots series, and we will talk about the social processes and psychological mechanism of violence in West Papua by Cahyo Pamungkas, and identification with Rwandan nation, reconciliation sentiments between survivors and non-victims groups by Ms. Clementine Kanazaire. I hope I pronounce it right. So without further ado, our discussion today will be moderated by Lida Wide. So I give the time and floor to Lida. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Effie. Yes, as was just introduced, this webinar series, we try to talk about different themes and different topics, always inviting scholars from 3 different parts, the Netherlands, Indonesia, and Africa, so as also to create more exchange about African matters and connections as well. And today I'm very happy that I can invite two people with whom I've worked both in Indonesia in the past few months, Cahyo Pamungkas, as already said, and Clementine Kanazaire, with who I'm working on a research project in Rwanda. So I'm very happy to invite you all. Without further ado, maybe I can invite Clementine, who holds a PhD in social psychology from the Université Libre de Bruxelles, and she works as an associate professor and was until very recently the head of the Department of the Mental Health in University of Rwanda. And she has a lot of experience in research and teaching, whereby the main interests are psychosocial support and reconciliation in the aftermath of genocide and mass violence. Themes in which she discusses collective memory, intergroup perception, social identity, and gender-based violence. So she has a lot of experience and a lot to tell. And I think her research presentation today will be extremely interesting because it touches upon the challenges about creating new identities or connections in the aftermath of mass violence and mass atrocities in Rwanda. So Dr. Clementine Kanazaire, can I please give the floor to you?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for giving me the floor, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to share with you my findings from a thesis done in 2016, and I will talk about a policy as a solution for fostering reconciliation after the genocide perpetrated against Tutsi in Rwanda. As you know, at the end of a civil war or a conflict, the major challenge is to establish relationship and also the cohabitation between the perpetrator and the survivor of the genocide. But we know various strategies exist to transform those relationships between those groups and to promote also reconciliation. In the context of the post-genocide against Tutsi, the Rwanda government has adopted diverse program policies, you know, Gacaca Court for justice. We have a fund to assist some survivors, and we have among them the policy we called I am Rwandan, Ndu Munyarwanda. That policy promoting the national identity for reconciliating the former perpetrator and the survivor. Rwandan identity, we think, is a vital structure that can foster trust between citizens and promoting also perception of similarity. This policy evokes an existing model in social psychology called common in-group identity model. According to this model, recategorizing subgroup in a superordinate group, such as Rwandan, not to identify you as a Hutu or Tutsi, but identify you as a Rwandan, can increase the perceived similarity between members of different subgroups and lead to more harmonious or positive intergroup relations. Some studies have been done in a different area. We can cite between Jews and Germans, and between also Aboriginal Canadian and European Canadian. And the results showed that when the categorization as human being was made, the North American Jews or Aborigines saw themselves as similar to members of the perpetrator group, and we realized that they assigned less collective guilty and were more willing to forgive them for the harm caused. But this was not the case when subordinate identity were made science. A recent study also done by Ricata and colleague showed that in Lebanon, when the identification with Lebanon has shown a positive effect on intergroup attitude between young Christian and Muslim after the Lebanese civil war, where identification with the religious group had the opposite effect. However, that common in-group identity model might not equally apply to all subgroups. For example, in the context where we have asymmetric power relation, where there are minority and majority group, sometimes the majority group member prefer policy that promotes inclusive identification for maintaining the status quo and the benefit and the advantage they have. But at the contrary, the minority could prefer more the dual identity that recognize the subordinate identity and at the same time fostering a strong identification with inclusive group. And the reason why minority group member prefer a dual identity is as a strategy is that they want to that focus on inclusive identity may be perceived as a threat to their ethnic or subordinate identity. And dual identity become a choice. We consider our inclusive identity and don't also remember we are the minority and we deserve that respect like the majority group and consideration also. In the study conducted in Northern Ireland, a positive association between subordinate Northern Irish identification and intergroup forgiveness was obtained only among Irish Catholic. The more the Catholic Irish identify as the Northern Ireland, the more they can forgive the other group. But this association was not observed among the Protestant group. Why? Protestants may not have seen subordinate identity as inclusive, but as identity that serves to distinguish Protestant, but because they are a majority in Northern Ireland, but a minority in Ireland. That show this common identity model does not applied equally when we have some minority and majority group. We have also to consider that numeric status while we are dealing with this common in-group identity model. And besides that status, numeric status, there are also, we have to consider also social emotional needs. We have to consider that the survivor or the victim does not have the same social emotional need with the perpetrator. According to the socio-emotional need model, victim has suffered from a threat to their identity as a meaningful and a powerful actor, and they generally experience a sense of loss of control, status, and honor, and also agency. At the same time, the member of perpetrator group experience threat to their identity as moral actor. They suffer from the negative moral image and the fact that they are not socially accepted in the moral community. Thus, according to this author, members of victim are likely to experience through that power loss, while the perpetrator experience a threat to their moral image and social acceptance. And the study conducted in between Israel Jews and the Arab, where Arab was considered as victim, and in context where Israel-Palestinian conflict, where they show that when Jews express more, they express more conciliatory attitude when they receive the empowering messages. But at the contrary, the member from a perpetrator group express that kind of conciliatory attitude when they receive the message of acceptance from the victim. And those are the study done on that common in-group identity model. And the recent study conducted in Central Africa and the Democratic Republic of Congo and Burundi, they show that negative emotion or negative attitude also may be reduced by that inclusive recategorization. What about in Rwanda, where we have that policy, where we have that policy as a choice for our state, and where we are not talking about the conflict between, but about the genocide? How can that promotion of Rwandan national identity can promote attitude of reconciliation between survivor and the member of perpetrator group? That was our objectives. And we had a sample of 247 people. And we did it's a quantitative research. We did a moderated mediation analysis on the effect of Rwandan identification and reconciliation sentiment. And this I tried to show this analysis with this flow chart, like the findings from questionnaire. You see there is, can you move on? Ladies, okay. You see there is an identification at the Rwandan nation. We measure the effect of Rwandan identification at Rwandan nation, effect of when people identify themselves as Rwandan, that the more they will show the sentiment of reconciliation. And that effect of the identification as Rwandan on the sentiment of reconciliation is mediated by the perception of the similarity intergroup similarities. But we realize that about that sentiment, those sentiments are moderated by the group. And the more you identify yourself as a Rwandan, also the more you see your self-esteem increased, and the more you will adopt that sentiment of reconciliation. First, we realize that the more both perpetrator group and the victim identify themselves as Rwandan. And this affects also the effect between the effect of national identification on intergroup reconciliation is also mediated by intergroup similarity for both groups. And those results are clear that are clearly supportive to that common in-group identity model. Identification with inclusive subordinate group improve intergroup relation, and this is mediated by the more they identify themselves as Rwandan, the more they perceive similarity between the group, the similarity with the out group, and the more they adopted the sentiment of reconciliation. But even we observe that this effect on among the both group, but the perception of the similarity, we realized that they were more significant in among the group of perpetrator. Other findings showed that the non-victim, the perpetrator group, were more willing to reconcile than survivor. And we saw that the level of self-esteem during commemoration were mediated by the effect of national identities. That means the more group of non-victim of member of perpetrator group, the more they identify themselves as Rwandan, the more their self-esteem increased during commemoration, and the more they are willing to adopt the sentiment of reconciliation. And that effect has not been observed among the survivor group or victim group. In this basis, we have proposed that we know the perpetrator group benefit from the subordinate identity, in part because the Rwandan identity allow them to improve the image tarnished by what they did during genocide and tarnished by subordinate group. At the contrary, the survivor may resist the loss of the ethnic identity because it would undermine the recognition of their victimhood. When you start to identify people as Rwandan, some victim can fear that they will not be longer recognized as victimhood because they have been killed because of their ethnic Tutsi. And as a conclusion, globally, our results suggest that policy of strengthening that national identity and by minimizing the ethnic identity endorsed by Rwanda might have been efficient in promoting intergroup relation. But the result indicates that in a real situation, explaining a complex socio-psychological process involved in intergroup reconciliation require a complementary use of more than one theory or model. In this case, you see that we combined a common group identity model and a need-based model of intergroup reconciliation. And practically also, in real life, when it comes to reconciliate the survivor and non-victim, and to allow them to live together, one program or policy cannot take in account all problems related to genocide. A complementary use of more than a program also is needed. I can say Rwandan a program for responding to the problem of the status of victimhood of the survivor. This program is completed by others, such as commemoration periods, where we recognize that victimhood of the survivor. We have a fund also for assisting the survivor, like FARJ, and we had Gacaca Court who tried to deal with the justice. And I think I'm done with my presentation. If there is a question, a comment, or you are welcome.
Thank you so much, Clementine. I'm looking at the audience here, and I see that many people are from Indonesia and other parts of other parts of the world. And I'm wondering if, to situate your findings a bit better, you can tell the audience a little bit more about Rwanda and what happened almost 29 years ago. I think even though many of us may know some of it, it would be nice to hear a bit more to contextualize the situation better. Is that possible? Can you share us a little bit about the background of what happened before these policies were put in place?
I think Rwanda is a country situated in East Africa, and it has been colonized at the beginning by the Germany, and after the Second World War, it comes Titora, I don't know how to say it in English, but to the Belgium. We become not a colony of Belgium, but the German
it's
moved
called a trusteeship officially, a trusteeship maybe.
For Belgium, and where we had some three social classes: Tutsi, who were Tutsi, Hutu, and the Twa, who they were the social class. But when the Belgian came, they started by governing with the Tutsi who were there. And they started also to show that the Tutsi are supreme compared to Hutu, and either to try to divide people for reigning after. And they gave the identity card in 1550, they gave some identity cards, and from that period, we had each Rwandan had an identity card that show either he's a Hutu or a Tutsi. And after that, there was like in other country, we become the colonial. There was that movement of decolonization, and when Rwanda became decolonization, those who take over for the First Republic continue to use that kind of ethnic group, and they favor the one group, Hutu. After that, they try to start the political balancing that kind of ethnic in education, in even the government, and Tutsi were left behind in that time. And the Second Republic also, it was like the
the conflict between the regional, they start that the people from South are are governing, while those from the North were not. And the First Republic favored those people from the North. And during that time, I didn't say that when the first, after the colonization, when the First Republic took over, it was by the Hutu. Some Tutsi were killed and the other immigrated from the neighboring country. And those who were outside started claiming for the right to come back in their country. And in 1990, they a war started by those who were upper air, who were outside, and they started to negotiate, and there was some negotiation at Arusha, but they didn't meet the what was scared secession fair. And in 2000, in 1992 and 1993, they started some massacres in some region in Rwanda, like massacres of Pagogwe and the massacres at Bugesera. And genocide started in April 1994, and it was a genocide perpetrated against Tutsi, Hutu extremists, and the militias called Interahamwe started to kill the Tutsi. And the arm of Rwanda Front Patriotic stopped the genocide and took all over and started by governing the country where Tutsi were killed, some perpetrator fled outside and other remain in the country. And you understand the way it was very difficult to cohabitate with former perpetrator, survivor to cohabitate with former perpetrator or the member of those family. And there was also some victim body everywhere. They started by bury them in dignity. They tried also to deal with that justice, where it was not possible also to judge a big number of perpetrators and people who were involved in that genocide, because it was a big number. They started to initiate Gacaca Court, which was like a homegrown solution we used at that time. And it was also a restorative justice. You have to punish and to restore and also to reintegrate that person in the community. And this policy of Ndumunyarwanda, it was like a solution, because we had for a long time that hand between ethnic, that hand with that cleavage, inter-ethnic division. And we started by thinking, if we allow people to identify, we suppress that identity, that identification as Hutu and Tutsi in official documents, is prohibited in official document to identify someone with the ethnic group. And that in the Munyarwanda was like a solution if we forget that kind of
ethnic, and we see as a Rwandan. We put together our common interest. We start by considering what we share as a strength, what we have in common, and you see that to see that if that can work and promote that cohabitation. We started also initiate some cooperative, what we call Wudehe, other program that try to not only to identify as Rwandan, but to give also together the people and to work together for a common interest, and to try to see if those kind of prejudice stereotype can disappear with those different program. I don't know if
Yes, I think this is a very valuable background. Also, if we start thinking about maybe later some of the dynamics that we see in Rwanda and some of the challenges encountered in Indonesia and solutions there. So I think it's good to have a bit of this background. And maybe from this, we can go soon to our second speaker. And Lester, I want to propose that if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box. I will look at this regularly, because this will, in this way, I can help make best time of the limited time, best use of the limited time that we actually will have for discussion and comparison. So over the course of the presentation, also of our next speaker, please feel free to share your questions in the chat, and I will look at these and gather them to make sure that we can try to answer all of the questions that are there. So thank you, Clementine, for now. We go to the second speaker. Our second speaker, I briefly introduced him, but I will tell you a little bit more. It's Cayo Pamungkas from the from BRIN, the Indonesian National Research and Innovation Agency, area studies where he works also. And he's a research professor at the Institute. He obtained his PhD also in the Netherlands, so in Europe, like Clementine in Belgium and Cayo in the Netherlands, at Radboud University of Nijmegen. And his work is mainly on ethno-religious groups in relation to in the Melanesian provinces of Indonesia and Southeast Asia. And his presentation is based on a paper, which I know is a recent paper, so I think it's quite interesting, new findings that we will hear about. And it's titled Perceived Threat and Violence, the Role of Emotion in Ethno-Nationalist Conflict in West Papua of Indonesia. Cayo, can I give the floor to you?
Thank you. Can I start right away? Hello? Do you hear my voice?
We hear you very well. You can start.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
We hear you
Thank
very
you.
well.
Okay, let me share screen. Yeah. Share screen. Okay. Could you see my share screen?
Yes, we see your screen.
Okay.
Yes.
Let me start. Thank you very much for the invitation. Good afternoon for my colleagues in Indonesia, and good morning, goedemorgen, to those who in Africa and the Netherlands. Yeah. Hope all of you are healthy and fine. Yeah? First of all, I would like to thanks for African Roots Program, Ibu Ledway and Mas Hilmi, yeah, Ibu Evi, and others who inviting me here to share, to present my the result of the research in West Papua. And this morning, in today's presentation, I would like to share my writing. Yeah, I still write for the Aggressive and Violence journal. My paper with Yogi Setia Permana, and title is a Perceived Threat and Violence: The Role of Emotion in Ethno-Nationalist Conflict in West Papua of Indonesia. This is a collaborative research, yeah, on emotion and conflict between I and Yogi Setia Permana. Now he is a PhD student in KIT Leiden, in the University of Leiden, Netherlands. Excuse me, I cannot I cannot move. So, Okay. So before I start the presentation, let me give the background of the West Papua. Maybe most of Indonesians researchers or scholars have already known, yeah. But I would like to repeat, yeah, a little bit as a background, the political landscape of West Papua. So it was before 1824. Yeah, you can see the West Papua, I think one of the biggest island in the world. Yeah, that consists of the East Papua. They call the Papua New Guinea, and the western part is in English we call West Papua of Indonesia. The term used in bahasa Indonesia become Papua Barat. Yeah, the West Papua. Now become 5 provinces. So before 1824, the West Papua, or we call the land of Papua, was under the rule of the Sultan of Tidore. And every once a year, the Sultan and his armed forces, in the naval forces, he took expedition to have to look for like spices or woods or the bird of paradise and also slave. So the Sultan Tidore mostly capture the indigenous Papuan, I think in 17th century, and they sold to the people outside of Tidore. So the slavery trade since 17th century. However, after 1824, yeah, after the Napoleon Wars in Europe, the Dutch as Indies enter the London Traktat London in 1824. That the eastern part of New Guinea belonged to the British and Germany, United Kingdom and Germany, and the western part of Papua New Guinea belonged to the Dutch as Indies. So it was assigned in Traktat London. However, the effective government of the Dutch as Indies in West Papua, it was around 1898 when the Dutch established a set up of fort in Manokwari and in Kaimana in 1898. And after the Japanese interruption in 1942 to 1945, after the recognition of Indonesia independence, the West Papuan was not ceded to Indonesia, but under direct rule from the Kingdom of Netherlands, and they call as Dutch New Guinea. It was ruled under the Kingdom of Netherlands from Amsterdam, so it was not belong to Indonesia. And after the confrontation between Indonesia and the Dutch in 1962 till 1963, and based on the New York Agreement in 1962, the Dutch ceded the West Papuan part to Indonesia, and Indonesian changed the name of West Papua into Irian Jaya, or now we call province of Papua. Now even become 6 provinces. And also in 1969, there was a plebiscite, we call the Act of Free Choice. In this consultation, the Indonesian government selected 1,024 people from indigenous Papuan leaders to have a plebiscite, and 99% they vote for Indonesia. But it is just the starting of the conflict, because according to the Papuan nationalists, this plebiscite is not act of free choice, but there's full intimidation, and it was out of the New York Agreement, because in the New York Agreement stipulated one man, one vote principle. But the plebiscite is not one man, one vote principle, because Indonesian government select 1,024. In the time, I think around 300,000 people or 500,000 people of the indigenous Papuans. So this is the political background. And secondly, I would like to tell you about the policy and implementation after Indonesian after the plebiscite 1969. Although the Papua nationalists and separatist groups said that the plebiscite is not according to the New York Agreement, but the result has been approved by the United Nations. And I forget. I think most of the voters in United Nations approved the Papuan integration into Indonesia in 1970s. And this is the after the plebiscite, yeah, and there are some policies that the Indonesian government to implement the policy of integration or nation building in Papua, in the land of Papua. The first of all is the military operation, and the military operation when the Indonesian government sends thousands of soldiers and police to eliminate or to neutralize the Free Papua movement, because during the time many indigenous Papuan raise secession or rebellion because they do not recognize the plebiscite, and they claim that the West Papua has already independent in 1960 when the Dutch allowed them to raise the national flag, yeah, the Morning Star, and also the national songs. So and Indonesian respond with the military operation, with bombing, with the assassination, with raid, etc. And yeah, there are many research about this. In around 10,000 people, up to 20,000 West Papuan died because of the military operation. Although this the second policy is to exploit of mining and plantation, yeah, because the land of Papua are rich for natural resources, mainly mine gold, silver, etc. Also they use for plantation like palm oil. And also the government send the people from outside of Papua, from Javanese, from Bali, to become the transmigration policy, to make to transfer the population from the crowded areas, the dense city areas, like Javanese province, to West Papua. They send to open the rice field, yeah. And now, as the impact of transmigration policy in some regencies, the migrant people become a majority in certain parts of the land of Papua, like in Merauke, in Sorong, in Napiri, in Mimika, etc. And also the other effort is to develop the infrastructure, mainly roads, building, hospital, and other and airport or seaport. And the infrastructure development is intensified from time to time, from the 1970s to 2000 and now to 2020. However, there are also many limited basic services, mainly for the indigenous Papuan, for the native people. They don't have good access of education and health. So the Human Development Index in the provinces in the land of Papua are the worst, yeah, in Indonesian provinces. I think number 33 or 34. Their number are the lowest. And after 2002, the Indonesian government granted the special autonomy and division of the provinces in 2002, and even now in 2021, no, Indonesian divide and rule, yeah, divide Papua into 6 provinces. Yeah. However, it does not resolve the political violence. Even it make worse the intensity of armed forces contact, also from time to time is increasing. And the implication of this policy, since the new order rule, there are so huge, I think after 2018, the displacement of people, the many, I think there are now 40,000 refugees, yeah, in the land of Papua, mainly in Central Mountains. Also the discrimination policies, the marginalization of indigenous Papuan, and depopulation. So if we observe the statistical data from the now the current population is the western part of Papua, around 4.5 millions, and the number of West Papua native or orang asli Papua is around 60%. However, if we observe the statistical data in foxtailing in 1930 or 1960, the indigenous Papuan are still majority. Also, we witnessed the political violence under West Papua National Liberation Army that intensified since 2018. And the third part, I would like to describe about the previous studies. I think there are so many studies about the West Papuan conflict and violence. The first category is violence and state sovereignty, conducted by Rutherford, Budi Hernawan, and also Muridan Wijoyo. They said that the political violence is an instrument to keep the state sovereignty. Or then Rutherford in her book of Laughing of Leviathan said that the Indonesian government in West Papua or in the land of Papua is another kind of occupation or colonialization, and this performance of the performance of power. Even the Budi Hernawan said that the Indonesian government used the violence as he gave illustration is a theater of violence, a theater of torture instead of theater of peace. And also the second studies about the documentation of violence under Amnesty International, International Coalition for West Papua. Also, yeah, many studies saw the violation of human rights in the land of Papua. And the third studies is about the socio-cultural impact of violence. I think it was there was research conducted by Richard Sofel and also Anderson. They said that the violence affected the socio-cultural dimensions, mainly the insecurity among the West Papuan people. And the fourth category of studies is about the psychological war. It was written by Camelia Webcanon. The Indonesian rule in West Papua is another form of psychological war. So we have arrived in research problem. Our objective is to describe the social processes and the psychological mechanism of violence in the West Papua by looking the role of emotion that arises from the perceived threat or feeling of being threatened. And this feeling, the perceived threat or feeling being threatened, fuels narrow-minded or conservative Indonesian nationalism and the Papuan ethno-nationalism sentiment. So in contrast to previous studies, this research focuses on investigating the emotional aspect of violent conflict in Papua, especially feeling of being threatened by other group. And this emotional aspect is important because it serves as an intermediary in the mechanism of supporting of collective violence. So this involving interaction between individual and the societal group. Yeah, we argue that the fear to the perceived threat or to the real threat strengthen the Papua ethno-nationalism and provoke the activists to respond to the Indonesian military operation with violence. And also in underside, the fear of independence of West Papua has forced the Indonesian military and police to adopt conservative or narrow-minded nationalism and to carry out a military operation against the Free Papua movement. So this is our argumentation, and this picture saw the West Papua National Liberation Army in the mountain area. It was set up in 1970s, and until now they still sustain. Okay, and we use the ethnic group conflict theory and also the concept of emotion. Yeah. So in ethnic competition theory, or we call an ethnic group conflict theory, it says that the stronger the actual competition between ethnic groups at the individual and contextual level, the stronger the feeling of being threatened. So it will be the more social identification mechanism will strengthen and will encourage a stronger national attitude and reaction to exclude other ethnic group. Yeah, we developed the ethnic group conflict theory that the emotion arises from the feeling of being threatened. Also, we find later that the emotion also arise from the memoria of passiones, the collective memory of violence in the past. So this is our finding. Yeah, first about the statistical of violence. The data is from 2020. You can observe from the table the statistic of violence from 2020 to 2012 to 2020. So we missed the 2 years data. The reports about the cases of violence or threat against local journalists, cases of violence on intimidation and obstruction of foreign journalists, and number of reported torture, number of reported cases of extrajudicial killing, also number of reported victim of extrajudicial killing, enforced disappearances, and prosecution of perpetrators, yeah, and number of political arrests, number of political prisoners, number of public peaceful assembly, or we call in bahasa Indonesia is pembubaran demonstrasi damai, ya, and also in violence against human rights defenders, and cases prosecuted with treason of charges. Yeah, so we can observe that there are so many political violence, human rights abuse in against the West Papuan people, the Papua native. And this is the data between 1998 till 2015, this setback, yeah, from the coordinating minister of development, education, and the coordinating minister of development, human and culture. Yeah, this is the map of the conflict, yeah, since after reform to 2015. The conflict mainly occurred in the central mountains and also in western part of view. And this is the recent map, we call the geography of terror. This map shows the number of internal displaced persons. I think mostly in Duka, in Mimika, in Puncak, and Intan Jaya, the site of the conflict. And so the question is, where does emotion play a role? Yeah, there are so many statements, yeah, in mass media, like when the West Papua Liberation Army or the secessionist group attacked the 16 construction workers in 2018. This many member of Indonesian Parliament said the incident poses a serious threat to the sovereignty of Indonesia. Yeah, the motive for the attack is no longer of any crime but a terror to national security. And he said that it is necessary to involve maximum military personnel. So the emotion arise from Indonesian official after the attack to the civilian workers. But the secessionist group said that they are not civilian construction worker. They are part of them. Some of them are the Indonesian spies or Indonesian military spies. So they executed them in 2018. Also, there are also some statement, yeah, from the chairman of People Consultative Assembly or MPR, yeah, that he said that ignore the human right issue. Don't hesitate to act only because of human right issue. So he provoked violence, yeah, sending more military in police to destroy the terrorist group, yeah, referring to the secessionist group. So this is another story. So the feeling of being threatened by the West Papua National Liberation Army or TPNBP motivated civil societies, expert communities, and conservative nationals outside of Papua to support any means necessary to eliminate the secessionist movement, including violence action toward indigenous Papuan. Yeah. So I think this is the main opinion, yeah, from the conservative nationalists in Indonesian armed forces to have a military option to resolve the West Papuan conflict. However, I think also the same response, yeah, in West Papua. So it is like the spokesperson of West Papua National Liberation Army. They said that if Indonesia continue terror and genocide against the civilian population of West Papua, if the international community does not interfere, so the West Papua National Liberation Army will announce a campaign to exterminate not only in the illegal military Indonesia, but also the illegal migrants, like illegal Javanese, and other settler who steal customary land and West Papuan resources. So yeah, so this rising of emotion among both sides. And the second part of the emotion is war and memoria passionis. What is the memoria passionis? This is the unwritten collective memory among the indigenous Papuan about their sufferings, and transmitted from generation to the younger generation. Such memories, yeah, makes with the perceived threat of Indonesian military, and that makes the memoria passionis and the feeling of being threatened among indigenous Papuan. It have makes energy. It stimulate them to fight against the Indonesian armed forces and the police. So the memoria passionis, I think this memory of bitterness, the unwritten memory about how they experience how they become victim in political violence in the past time, that transfer from generation to other generation. So there are example of the memoria passionis. Yeah, this when I visited Wamena in 2018. Yeah, one of my informants said that the safest place in the land of Papua is a place where there are no officers of armed forces or national police. So if there is no police and no soldier, so it would become the safest place, the peaceful place. So, and also the production and circulation of memoria passionis is a crucial component of cycle of violence in the land of Papua. This collective memory takes the form of a series of stories shared socially through storytelling within the family or clan. Even there are many films, they documented their memoria passionis, so everyone can watch the movies. If you open the Papuan Voices, you will watch the documentary film about the memoria passionis, the bitter story in the land of Papua. Okay, and this is like example of a movie told about the memoria passionis. Yeah, yeah. There is a story. A woman that her husband died in Nabire in 2000, and this story shared by the community of widows in Nabire in 2015. And I think there are thousands of stories like this among West Papuan people. They share stories in their family, their clan, their neighborhood. They collectivizing the trauma of the Papuan people. So the filmmaker then share a film on the YouTube platform and the Papuan Voices website, so that 1,000 people of Papua and outside of Papua can observe, can watch this movie. And this is a story about the Egyanus Kokoya, the commander of the secessionist group in Duka. I think the Indonesian said that this is the brutal commander because he shot 19 innocent workers. He said to my informant, the struggle of the Free Papua organization, not for prosperity and not for autonomy and for not infrastructure development. The Free Papua movement is to determine its destiny. Yeah? The OPM struggle is they only accept the dialogue facilitated by the third parties, and all offer of peace from the government will not be enough. While crying emotionally, he said that this struggle was so that from Sorong to Samarai could decide for themselves, through the referendum. I know that he loved the nation and the land of Papua. Even though he did not go to school, he received a mandate from his father, Daniel Kokoya, who died fighting the Indonesian armed forces to continue and lead the struggle for free Papua. Therefore, when he heard and saw the armed forces troop attacking the central highland of Papua, shooting and torturing indigenous group, he felt that Indonesian forces were threatening Papua, and his love for the Papuan people strengthened. He said that his troop will hunt down the Indonesian soldiers and police terrorists who killed Papuan. This my interview in June 2021 when I visited Jayapura. So my informant interview of the Egyanus Kokoya. And this about the in 2019, this is the last finding, the protest against racism. We call the Papuan Life Matters. It happens during Indonesian soldier torture West Papuan, the disabled West Papuan in 2000. I think this in 2019. The Papuan Life Matter is during the racism against Papuan student in Surabaya in 2019, when the Indonesian people and military in Surabaya said them they are monkey, they are a separatist group, and someone capture and upload in social media, and it become the wave of demonstration put in the land of Papua and in all Indonesia. I think almost in Indonesia, in most of Indonesian provinces by the West Papuan student, and some demonstration is raise violence in West Papua. I think 36 people died because of this demonstration. So this is my conclusion. The first is that a perception of threat arise not only because of the competition and contestation with other group, but also because the production and the circulation of Memoria Passionis. And based on the case of West Papua, we saw that feeling or threat or perceived threat evoke the sentiment of Nehru nationalism and ethno-nationalism that encourage racism and acts of aggression. The result of our study confirmed the applicability of the realistic conflict theory and the group conflict theory to analyze the role of the emotion in violent conflict in West Papua. And the feeling of being threatened, we propose that perceived threat arises also from the Memoria Passionis, arises from the competition. And also let me, for the last, I think we are talking, I and the first speaker, Clementine, talk about the identity construction and violence. In anthropology, we know that there is a concept of analog and digital. The analog emphasis that that our group, in group and out group, there are some degree of similarity and differences. So there is a degree of similarity and differences we call analog. But in the digital perspective, according to Erikson, we convinced that our group are totally different with out group. So it is not possible to make boundaries between group. So we call, Erikson said that it is the like a digital, how we call, how we regard that our group is our group is totally different with out group, and the in group are homogeneous. It's like out group are homogeneous, they're totally different, and it's different from the analog perspective. There are some degree of differences and similarities between one group in out group, and the identity construction, the ethnic boundaries increasing as a result of the interaction. Maybe we refer the Frederick Barth, the definition of the ethnic boundaries, the marginalization, the war, the human rights abuse. So it as a situation that that strengthen the ethnic boundaries between Indonesian and the West Papuan. Okay, I think this is my presentation, and thank you very much for listening. Hope it would be useful for you. Thank you. Time and place I give back to Bu Letiwei, please. Yeah. Thank you very much for the thank you for listening.
Thank you, Chayo, for this very interesting and rich presentation. I expect that we have many questions. I haven't seen any questions in the chat yet. If you have just questions, please post them in the chat. Maybe I can start with a more provoking question to Chayo to also try and see how we can connect the findings from these different researchers in terms of, we see that in terms of the tensions and the conflict that are happening now in Rwanda or in West Papua are quite in a different situation now, where the tensions and violence, maybe in West Papua, is something that happens today. And in the presentation of Clémentine, it is years after the genocide against the Tutsi. But looking at both context, I wonder, you started talking about this already, Chayo, at the end. I wonder if there would be ways or have been efforts to, and what these look like then, to stimulate identification with the national identity in West Papua. You mentioned some of the experiences of threat and perceived threat, but what about experience of inclusion and this more positive identity of Indonesian? Have there been any, can you tell us a little bit about activities that have taken place from the central government to stimulate this identification with Indonesia rather than a more ethnic-based or narrower nationalist-based of identification?
So I should answer or later?
If you
okay.
want.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. The inclusion, there are many some positive policies, like to building the road, rice field, the government give the scholarship to the West Papuan students. They have the program to give the scholarship of Papuan students to study in Indonesia in high school and in universities, and also in foreign countries. The governor Lukas NMB, for example, used the Indonesian budget to fund the 1,000 doctor program. And Indonesia also took many effort to build the hospitals, the health centers, the school. However, there are no enough doctor because many doctor and nurses, mostly from the migrant population. So after 2000, they flee to home provinces. And so in Papua, there are many sorts of doctor, nurses, school teachers. So the government took many effort, to make the inclusion. However, it is not enough, because in underside, the government continue the military operation, send police and soldiers, and until now in the land of Papua there are 17,000 soldiers sent after 2002, and police also, I think, around 10,000 police. So those are different if we compare with the Dutch occupation in West Papua. The Dutch government used the anthropologists and the missionaries, the priest, the Catholic minister, priest, pastor, and the Protestant minister. The missionaries work for they learn their culture, they speak the local language, and they provide services to the indigenous people. Also, the Dutch government sent many doctors, medical doctors, graduated from the Netherlands in the time in 1960, like the effort of Governor General Van Baal, and the medical doctors go from one village to another village, and they're working hard. They are the best medical doctor student in the Netherlands in 1960, and they went to the West Papua and to make effort to help the Papuan services. Is different from now. Even now, Indonesian government forbid the missionaries flight in West Papua, because even now Indonesian government suspected that the missionaries provoked the West Papuan to to rise again to rebels, to provoke them. So there are so many differences. How the Dutch government attempt to they did not use the military expedition. They use more by sending the anthropologists to collect the information and to how to approach the indigenous people. So so when we interview many people in West Papua since 2004. They said that the Dutch occupation is still better because from Indonesian occupation, because the Dutch use the socio-cultural and religious approach compared to Indonesian people who practice the military approach and the capitalist of development. So the Indonesia conducted so many economic program, so many economic development, but they do not pay attention to the sustainability of the indigenous people, and the development program has displaced the indigenous people and only benefit mostly for the migrant population. So yeah, it's very so in my studies, current studies, I think I think most of Papuan people, they have the imagination as not being part of Indonesian nation, but they said that we are part of the Melanesian people in Pacific. The identification is politically constructed. Okay, the recording stop. I give the time for you. I think this.
Okay, thank you so much for this elaborate answer, and I think that's indeed maybe important difference and challenge also, that this identification with the national identity of Indonesia seems not to be there, or only limited so maybe. And you were mentioning about the emotions. Can you elaborate a little bit to me how you feel that these emotions, and they of course we see these emotions in your presentation as socially constructed, but to what extent are they pivotal to understand the violence and the positioning of the do we need these emotions to understand these this perspective of Papuan population towards this national identity, or would a needs-based approach be more helpful, like in terms of Clementine? So what really is this emotion? Why do we need to see these as emotional?
The emotional come from the both side, either from both of them, the Indonesian side and the West Papuan side. The emotion is part of the feeling hatred. However, such kind of feeling is productive in the social interaction. It does not appear, and even it accumulates. The feeling of being threatened from the history of integration. So it rises from the memoria of Passionis. It comes from the stories from the older generation. Also, it comes from the empirical phenomena, like the marginalization from development, or they become displaced because of development conducted by Indonesia, and secondly, they become refugees or victim of violence, during the along the integration in Indonesia. So how to resolve the violence? I think we have to resolve the issue in the sorry, I forget to speak in English. We have to resolve the root causes of the conflict. So the first is the stop violence. So the Indonesians should change their perspective to have humanitarian pause, to stop the violence and to resolve the conflict through the dialogue, as Indonesia conducted the peace dialogue to the Free Aceh movement in 2005. So because many grievances, many sorrow, the memory of Pasionis come from the violence. Violence resulted from the development. Violence resulted from the political violence. They suffer their psychology. They suffer their mind. The painful is not only in physics but also in the mind and the heart of the West Papuan people. So I think the Indonesians should treat the West Papuan people like Indonesians treat the Acehnese people, to resolving the conflict through the non-violence mechanism, through the dialogue, the negotiation, and even we can also follow, like the the President of Abdurrahman Wahid or Gus Dur policy, to allow they identify themselves with the flag, with the songs, etc. Give them, provide them symbols to express their identity. I think this is part to what's in English, to nurse, to prevent the emotion have a role in the conflict. Okay, let's maybe other question.
I think that's very interesting. I have one question from the audience, from Pak Hakam. And it's actually a question to both of you. Maybe we can first ask Clementine to answer. And this reflects a little bit on the question of how these experiences, the tragedies of the past, are being remembered and passed on and being shared in society. And Jaya already briefly touched upon it. But the question is whether and how these memories are being shared through pop media, music, film or museums. So in what ways do these experiences of the past, are they being shared in society, being collectivized and being passed on? Clementine, do you want to respond first? Is Clementine still there?
I can respond to this question with sharing the Rwandan experience. The government of Rwanda has been instituted a period of commemoration each year. And during that commemoration, people are able to share those kind of memories for the victims, and it's an opportunity also to express that they are suffering, what they experienced during the genocide. And sometimes it's not very easy. We have to deal with some emotional crisis during that period. And we have that kind of also museum memorial site that show the history of the genocide. The main one, in each district we have also people come to charge of explaining what happened in Rwanda. We have testimonies. Then we have some in those memorial sites. And memorial sites who don't feel good during the visit can go for refresh, or if there are some democracies also, they have the counselor who can deal with those kind of those emotions. We have also some nights of commemoration, night for commemoration in different regions that are organized. And during that night, people share the experience, their suffering, and sometimes those kind of commemoration cannot heal those suffering, but we have also the mental health division in the Ministry of Health. We have RBC, Rwanda Biomedical Center, and in the Rwanda Biomedical Center, we have that mental health division, and the service for mental health who deal with a lot of cases of traumatic cases. We have people who suffer from PTSD. Those kind of mental health services are decentralized at from above to the community level. We have mental health service at health center, at district hospital, and we have what we call community health workers who have been trained in mental health and also in those kind of crisis emotion we can observe in the community. But if the case are complicated, it has to transfer to health center and to the district, depending on the help that those people are needed. But I think recognizing the victimhood and give the space where people can share that kind of suffering, it's sometimes a step of healing. And I remember also during the Gacaca court, it was a traditional court that we used for dealing with some minor crime, and it has been transported in the case also of the genocide, where we had the people elected by the people from the village who helped people to deal with those kind of issues. We have also the women raped during genocide, and those also have suffered and has some particularity. Some receive the individual help from the health center, but we have also some group therapy that has been established for dealing with those kind of with dealing with the women raped during genocide. And that group therapy helped them also in terms of dealing with loneliness, dealing with realize that they are not alone. Some shared the experience that helped others to cope or to overcome some activities. And then they have also, some of them have been put in cooperative, and they started to make what we call, I'm sure you know it, uduseke, but I don't know how to say it in Kinyarwanda. Some arts, use some arts for fabricating some articles and gain more money. Yeah, that's kind of the intervention I can share. Because after the genocide, you have to deal with the suffering of the victim, and you have to think also about revitalizing the identity implicated in the conflict. That is why we didn't remain the perpetrator behind. We started by mobilizing in the prison for changing the attitude, for motivating them by about asking forgiveness, and also prepare them to be reintegrated in the community after being released. Because a lot of people who were involved in the perpetrating genocide, we have those who were in the planning, but others, they had about 50 years as a punishment, 50 years in the prison. And the 50 years has been, they've finished the punishment, and they have to return in the community. And it's not easy also if you are a survivor and you are waiting someone who killed your family member to come in the community. We tried, there are some interventions like sociotherapy, who tried to prepare the community, and also to use that sociotherapy approaches to put together a member of survivor group and the member of perpetrator group who have been released. And those kind of sociotherapy has also showed a positive impact in terms of relationship between those kind of the group. And regarding the memory, also there are some testimony recorded, and there are people who tried to write some books, some autobiographic books that their experience in genocide. And we have some program also in school, peace, history, where you try also to teach that history in the class. And sometimes it's not easy with some teachers are not comfortable with that course, but we try to train and to train again in order to allow those teachers to teach. That's regarding the justice, memory, and collective memory. And there are also other initiatives done in terms of favoring that kind of recognition, like Ndi Umunyarwanda, sociotherapy.
So, Clementine, this means that you mentioned many different activities and programs, and most of them, I think, they take place either as organized by government or other kind of institutions, and so more in the formal institutional kind of settings, the schools or the commemoration. What about in more artistic expressions? Do you see ordinary people, artists, musicians? Do they also, do you see that that they are also reflecting on the past, on this tragedy, expressing their ideas and emotions and memories of the past, or is that less so the case?
Pardon?
So my question is whether or not the examples that you gave are mostly related to more institutional or formal settings, or organized by government or other kind of organizations, healthcare, schools. So are there also artists expressing memories, emotions about these past tragedies through pop music or poems, or can you reflect on that more artistic expressions?
Yeah, it's very amazing. We have, when you go through the history, you saw that there is an evolution about the music, because during commemoration, there are some music, and there are some music who are expressing that suffering. At the beginning, the music were just focused on expressing those suffering. And 15 years after, we started to have those kind of song that focus on that suffering, and also talk about the hope for the future. And others are talking about suffering, the hope, or are also showing what we have achieved, or the way we tried to overcome and to live with that suffering, but to continue to show to the future it's possible. Even you are a survivor, you can achieve a lot of things if you are helped with other people. In poetry, also, I remember there are some students who wrote that kind of poetic message in terms of genocide. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Shayo, you mentioned already that in the context of West Papua, there are also movies being made to share this memory. Can you also reflect on some of the other spaces, formal or more artistic, where these memories are being shared, and what kind of narratives or emotions are expressed in these contexts?
Can I say something?
Okay.
Sorry.
Yes, please.
I will add that also during my thesis, I registered a commemoration ceremony from the beginning at the end, but sorry, I didn't. I don't have it. My computer had a problem, but I have some in my thesis. I have some codes regarding the where I tried to analyze some discourse from the authorities and some discourse from the survivor. And what I can say from 2016 in Rwanda, we started also to hear from the righteous, the moral examples, the people who tried to save and not to be involved in the genocide. We call it in Kinyarwanda abarinzi b'igihango, the protectors of friendship. Those are the righteous in Rwanda, and those righteous are now also giving their testimony, how they saved, and how they decide not to be implicated in perpetrating genocide. They give also some testimony during the commemoration ceremonies which happen each year in Rwanda. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. No, can I speak now?
Yes, please.
Hello. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mas Hakam. It's my colleague. He raised question because nobody have question, so he raised question to me. Okay. Yeah. First of all, let me clarify that what's happening in the land of Papua. Some scholars said that it is not a genocide. It is, they call as ecocide because of the destruction of the environment and the ecological sites. They are displaced from the development. Or in Clark said that it can be called as ethnocide. Yeah. Ethnocide is the concept in anthropology, refers the development who, the capitalistic development who does not protect the minority groups or indigenous people, ethnocide or ecocide, or like James Emily said, we can also say that it's slow motion genocide. Yeah, it is not genocide itself, but it's a slow motion. Or slow motion, it means gradual, yeah? And we cannot feel it, but maybe it will end to the disaster of for a minority group. And the story of disaster and tragedy, yeah, museum in the postmodern definition, museum is grief. So it's some, there are many stories. If the West Papuan fire, shooted or killed by the Indonesian military, they put it in the public spaces, like when Tes Eluai, the leader of West Papua movement, he was assassinated by the Indonesian military in 2002, and they put it there, the Tes Eluai, close to the airport. So everyone go to airport, they will see the Purit, the Kirkov, or the burial is a museum itself. the grave, the makam, ya. In bahasa we call is makam, kuburan, it's a museum. So if we show the makam, we will remember the story about the human right of violence itself. So in the land of Papua, there are many victims of human right abuse in the center of the in the area, in the public spaces, like close to airport, close to city center, to downtown. So, and yeah, it's also museum. Is it right, Mas Akam? Because you told me before that the grave is also museum. Like when the Muslim people pilgrimage to the grave, they visited a museum. Because yeah, this the post-colonial, postmodern definition of the museum. And the film, of course, yeah, film and music in the West Papua, they have in the past time during the New Order government, they have Mambasak, yeah, the group musics, the indigenous music they collected, they sing and they write again. But unfortunately, the Indonesian government banned the group in 1980s and assassinated or killed of their singers and the musician. And the remain of the group, they exiled in the Netherlands and also in Vanuatu in Australia. And however, after reform, many local musics because the Papuan people have diverse language, so they sing in their local language. And like in the mountain people in Lembah Balim people, the Balim Valley, they always have it's like meratap. What is in English? They cry if someone they love pass away. And in the even if someone was assassinated by the Indonesian or police or soldier, they have songs, but they sing in their community. And yeah, and music and film also become the instrument of resistance. The West Papua native, they created their identity to make their flag, yeah, the Morning Star flag in the what noken? What's in English noken? Like knoten peg, yeah, the peg knotted by the woman, and they put the symbol of the Morning Star to their backs from woods. Yeah, and because Indonesian government forbid the Morning Star, so they now use the Cuban the Cuban flag because the flag of Cuba is similar with the Morning Star. The difference is only the number of the line, blue and white, and the West Papuan have 7, and the Cuban have 5 blue the line, but the Morning Star is almost the same. So if the police arrested them, no, this is not Papuan Morning Star, this is the Cuban flag. So the flag is like why they use flag, because it's to keep the memory of Pasiones, to keep the memory of violence. They also produce the film. In 2010, the Franciscan of Papua, the Indonesian Franciscan missionaries also, supported by the NGO, to the train of the youth of the Papuans to document their movie. So, and they have organization they call Papuan Voices in all of the district and regencies in the land of Papua. So every human right violence, political abuse, they will document, and they make the documentary film. It is more efficient and more effective to campaign from the by using the movie. So the movie, there are so many movies in West Papua told about the tragedy. I would like to give example. Is they call there was a movie in 2011 or 2012. They call the Mahose group, the Mahose clan. The Mahose clan in Merauke in South Papua, they should keep the sagu plantation from generation to generation, to keep the sagu for the Papua native in the South Papua. However, after arrival of the palm oil plantation, I think in 2010 or 2009, the clan was displaced. So then they work to dig the sands, menggali pasir, digging the sands in the coastal of Merauke, and become operation. This is the tragedy. How the palm oil plantation has displaced the Papua native from to keeping the maintenance of sustainable development, like a sagu plantation, after the company and took the customary land. So they were exited, they were forced, displaced to the city, and to make a living, they work by dig the sand, menggali pasir. So it become operasi. So this is sad story. Also many stories about how the people who in like there is a movie in Kerom in the northern Jayapura. The indigenous group, they were forced to give the land to the palm oil plantation. They signed 5,000 hectares, but the company manipulated. The state company took the 50,000 hectares in the northern of Papua, and on the people, this Adat society and the indigenous people group, they reclaim to have the 50,000 people hectares for the palm oil plantation. There are so many such stories. So your question, the Lithuania question, is very important. What is the example of inclusion? Because as far as I know, the exclusion is more than inclusion. Of course, there are some inclusion, like giving scholarship, building airport, building a market for the indigenous people, building the road, the construction, the highway. But vote for the development, because the West Papuan people, they do not benefit from the development, because the lack of human resources, the lack of education, So yeah, the exclusion is more than inclusion if we count it. Yeah. By this said, there is a slow motion genocide or ecocide or ethnocide, or even there is a dissertation in Harvard University by Veronica Kusumariati that the relation of West Papua and Indonesia is like internal colonialism. Also, the dissertation of Sophia Chow from Australia National University that about the land grabbing resulted from the palm oil plantation to make discrimination bigger. Okay, this I think other question, please.
Thank you very much for this elaborate answer and very insightful also. And speaking of this theme, I'm also thinking about the symbols and the art. And I see also in Rwanda, we are working on a project looking at the intergenerational transmission of these memories of the past, how they are passed on to the next generation. But I think in Papua, it would be interesting to also start writing on that, Chayo. So this is my challenge for you. To also develop a paper on the intergenerational transmission of these memories. I think that would be really, really fascinating and important to understand better. I have one more question, and I think this is the last one of this day. So the question is by our colleague Effie, and she asked, the violence in Rwanda is recognized nationally by the state, but in Papua the situation is different, where the violence is concealed and not acknowledged nationally. Nevertheless, both speakers framed the discussion in terms of national identity. How is national identity, how does it play a role in easing or in else worsening the trauma of violence? What are your perceptions of that, Chayo? Maybe you can start.
I think I am later. Okay, thank you, Ibu Effie, for the question about the national identity. So it becomes my current research if we pass the Rumah program selection in 2023. Our group, I and Hakam, also some people in here, we are conducting research about the searching for Indonesia, searching for where is Indonesian in West Papua. I think it's worsening the trauma of violence. Like, for example, when I conducted a fieldwork in Papua in 2022, last year, I gave a souvenir, a kaos, a t-shirt, the color green, I give to my informant. Then he used in the community the green color t-shirt, and he was questioned by the community. You are part of Indonesian, you betray us. No, it is not. Because the green t-shirt is like the armed forces, like the infantry battalion in West Papua. Even they don't know the green color. The green color represent Indonesia. Yeah, it's very dangerous. So I forget to say that in 2021, the last 2 years, I used the red and flag jacket, from my office, from BRIN, from BRIN and BPS. I went to Supiori, the remote area in the island in West Papua, via the Kelvin Bay or the Schouten Island in the Dutch map, Schouten Island in the Pia. I forget that I used the red and white symbol in my jacket. So I realized, but it's too late because I already in the village, remote area. I can do nothing. Then I asked, I visited a friend, the old friend. Oh, I'm sorry, I used the red and white flag in the jacket. No worries, you are friend. We know your background, but if we don't know your background, maybe we can. You can disappear. You can disappear. Yeah, because they know me, they pick me up, so it's no problem. But when I use the red and white flag in the remote areas, when there is no migrant population, I feel scary. Sorry, I get cough. So the national identity is make trauma become worse. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chaya. You see, from what I hear you saying, these symbols are very sensitive. It tells all about what the meaning of these of the experience of trauma behind. Clementine, can you also reflect? I mean, your presentation was also really, of course, on this topic. But if you look at the trauma, do you feel that the national identity plays a role in easing, or can it also be worsening the trauma of violence? Clementine.
Sorry, can you repeat?
Yes, of course. So the question is whether the national identity, so the Rwandan identity, the identity of being Rwanda, whether it eases or can also be worsening the trauma of violence.
I think it cannot heal nor worse, but indirectly it can contribute if there is no negative attitude between people. It can also contribute somehow, but not heal as such the trauma, the PTSD. But I can say not heal, but prevent somehow. When people were not transmitted that kind of pain in the messaging, the communication they provide to their children, that can contribute in reducing that kind of transmission via the communication, via that family memory, via those partners, via that kind of signs, symptoms such as aggressivity that can be transmitted to the children. But we realize that they are also a part of genetic, that some studies have shown that there's a genetic transmission of trauma from pregnant women who suffer from PTSD. They transmit it to their children. I think it can help in that trauma that can be translated via that kind of communication when people, when the parents consult and are helped to overcome or to heal that kind of PTSD, and they will sensitize. Also, we need also to develop a kind of guideline or a module that can show to the parents what to say, how to say it, when to say it, how to say at a given stage of the development of the children, what to tell to adolescent, what to tell to child. I think we need that kind of guideline in the module that can help also the parent to deal and to prevent that trauma or the suffering experience they experienced, not to transmit it to the children while they are communicating. But if they are not healed, it will be difficult. They have also to consult and to seek help when they are suffering from that PTSD. And as I said, Ndi Umunyarwanda is one program. He has his strength in terms of that reducing stereotype, prejudice, and we have also to think about that kind of a psychosocial support that can help people who suffer. We have to think also the way of recognizing that victimhood of the survivor that will revitalize them and also restore the agents they lose during that genocide during that the genocide perpetrated against Tutsi. I think we have to combine a lot of intervention in order to deal with a big number of consequences related to genocide.
Okay, thank you so much. I think we have reached the end of the presentations of our speakers. I want to thank you both very much for these very informative and insightful stories about past and ongoing tragedies in West Papua and in Rwanda. I learned a lot of new things, so many thanks for that. And I also want to let you know that we try to organize these African Roots webinars every month. So if you are interested in African matters, transnational relations, but also in learning from comparisons from Indonesia and various parts of Africa, I hope to see you again next month. And maybe, Effie, I can give you the word for the closing.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. This webinar has already been held by, informing us with new things. And I think it's very insightful, even though the approaches are different, one from psychological approaches and others from anthropological, but I think we can still find some relevance and similarities as well as differences. So thank you very much for the two speakers, Dr. Clementine
Thank you.
Kana Zaire, thank you very much. And then also Prof. Cahyo Pamungkas, and also for our moderator, Dr. Lidewide. Thank you very much. And thank you very much also for all the participants who have joined us in these webinar sessions. I hope to see you all in the next webinar sessions. Thank you. And yeah,
Terima
goodbye.
kasih Mbak Evi.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yul
Mas
Arif
Helmi.
Budang,
Thank you
Ridwan,
very much.
ya.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Prof.
Bang.
Cahyo, Prof.
Thank you,
Clementine.
Clementine.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you. Terima kasih
Thank
semua
you
ya.
very much.
Mas Hilmi dan
Terima
teman-teman.
kasih. It was nice seeing you again all.
Oke. Oke, see you
Thank
next
you very
month.
much, Lide.
Uh,
Thank you, Miss
Thank you.
Clementine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Terima kasih, Pak Ikam. Bapak, thank you, Clementine. Ya, masih di jalan. Sampai jumpa lagi.
Terima kasih.